You're listening to the Literary Lounge with Dawn Bates on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM. Well, good morning, everybody. And yes, I'm back in the studio. As you can probably tell, I am getting over a really severe cold, flu bug this week. And so I'm back in the studio and... Well, it's been an interesting week. Just to warn you, I have my tissues here. I have my homemade medicines. So I'm going to do my absolute best. I've had to channel my inner mama and pull it out of the bag to be with you here this week. Now, I have just downloaded all of my songs ready to put onto the pod, or the pad, but I can't find them. So today is going to be interesting. It looks like they've had a really good sort out here in the studio. And so it's just, we're gonna just see how we get on. So it's been quite an interesting week for me, because normally I'm like, up at it, doing it, hustling. Well, not really hustling. I kind of stopped hustling quite a few years ago, just stepping deeply into my feminine and, just doing what felt right and going with the flow and allowing myself to receive. It took a lot of deep inner work. And last week I was at the Encore event in London, as I mentioned on last week's show, with Ideas Fest, created by the fantastic Frankie James and her team. And I met someone and we were talking about, the divine feminine, the masculine, the program that Louis Theroux came up with has just released. I think it's on Netflix. In my haze this week, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to watch it. I don't normally watch a lot of TV, well, unless it's Yellowstone. I am a bit partial to a bit of Yellowstone. Just so as you all know, Dutton Ranch with Rip and Beth. Coming out in May. Those of you who like a bit of cowboy action. And we were talking about this Manosphere program that Louis Theroux has done. And I thought, you know what? My eyes hurt too much to actually read. That's how ill I've been. I've not actually read anything this week. I haven't, I tried reading a client manuscript. I was like, yeah, I just can't do this. My eyes were burning. So I watched this Manosphere and I thought, oh, this is so very interesting, because you have Louis Theroux, who is, how can we put, I find his interview research techniques quite interesting, because he's not exactly forthright, shall we say, and he is, and if I share this bit with you, there's a part in it where HS Tiki Toki, I mean, what a name, HS Tiki Toki looked Louis Theroux up and down, because I mean, he's quite lean, isn't he, Louis Theroux, and then he's opposite HS Tiki Toki. I really like that name. It's just like, oh my God, did you take yourself seriously? But this is the thing. This is a guy who's deeply in his testosterone. I won't say his masculinity, but I'll say his testosterone. He's all beefed up, and I am going to say something now that's probably going to shock a lot of people, but I'm listening to these guys that Louis is interviewing, and I was like, yeah, I get that. And even though I got it, I didn't always agree with it, but as somebody who believes in freedom of speech, even if I disagree wholeheartedly with what they're saying, I have to respect them for saying it. Now, there were several incidences in this program. I don't know if you've watched it, but I'm probably, spoiler alert, most people have watched it by now. I'm always late to the party when it's something that I have to watch. There was things on there that I was like, why is Louis Theroux as big as he is? I mean, because seriously, because he was so hesitant. He didn't interview. He was just almost like observing. And there were so many questions that could have been asked that he just didn't. He didn't challenge. And it was almost as if he was afraid to challenge them. And it's like, is that just a condition of journalism these days, where people are afraid to question and afraid to, really challenge other people's ideas? Or was it because he really was intimidated? Now, as a single woman, I don't want my guy to be intimidated. I want him to be able to stand up for himself and stand up for me and stand up for the boys, or the children. I mean, my boys are much older now. They're grown men, and that whenever we're out, it's like I'm flanked by my own 2 bodyguards. And I know that if there was ever a situation that I've raised my boys to, defend us, I'm not going to suggest that they take them to the train station. Those of you who've watched Yellowstone will know what that means. I found it really fascinating that Louis was just... I've seen a wet lettuce with more action. I was really disappointed, and there was nothing really new in this well, I call it a documentary because that's what it's being promoted as, but it really wasn't. It really, really wasn't. And he didn't get underneath the whole thing about why these lads are the way that they are. He couldn't comprehend that these young men were capitalizing on other people's zest for fame, their cluelessness, their lack of confidence that they have to piggyback onto somebody else's, or that they would do things that go against certain moral guidelines, shall we say. But the guys in the manosphere, like the Tiki-Toki, he was like, yeah, I don't agree with it, but I can make money off it. And he's completely detached himself from his morality in a lot of ways, to make money off certain things that will provide an income for himself and his future family. Now, whether you agree with the things... Now, okay, so I am someone, well, I don't agree with it, I don't agree with that. I mean, I was invited to write an article for a local... Well, not a local newspaper. Okay, so when I say a local newspaper, I think British newspaper. Having travelled, as you know, to many countries around the world, I consider Britain local. I don't mean just local here to Cardiff or local here to Wales. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't really want to write for them. I don't want to be associated with them. And that for me is, that's my moral compass. And yeah, it might actually get a lot of views. It really would help accelerate my business. But again, guilty by association, if you think to the Linkin Park song, which is not something I was going to play today. I'm really quite concerned about my music choices today, because I'm like, I just downloaded some really cool songs and now I can't play them because I can't find them. I will, though. I will figure it out by the end of today. If not, you'll get them all next week. But if you've seen Inside the Manosphere, I'd like you to text in on 07354 770 and let me know your thoughts on it, because I want to get this conversation going, because I really did feel that Louis Theroux was just a pointless exercise in some ways, because there was nothing new. And this is one of the things that in the DBI Author Academy this month, in the month of March, as you know, we're focusing on journalism, critical thinking and critical analysis. Because if you're going to write a book, regardless of whether it's fact or fiction, regardless of what subject, you need to be able to think critically about what you're writing. You need to be able to analyse all the data and all the facts that you're putting out there. You need to be able to analyse your own thinking, with the morality and making money from it. So, this name, HS Tiki Tok, I mean, this is the thing. He doesn't care. He really doesn't care. And there was a brilliant part near the end when he asked Louis Theroux whether he would agree that there's a genocide going on in Palestine. Louis Theroux had nothing. And I was like, go, like, I just absolutely was so pleased that, I think his name is Harrison, said that. I really can't, I was like, yeah, absolutely, call that out. And this is the thing, like, he has the freedom of speech. He is free from other people's opinions to an extent, because he did get cross and he was worried about how Louis would present him or how he would do it, because we saw the reaction of where he was really, I mean, whether he was pumped up on something. I mean, his eyes were bulging a bit. I mean, I used to be a raver. I've seen eyeballs like that sometimes. I'm not insinuating. He might have just had some of those guarana drinks and those high energy drinks. He might have just been down the gym. We don't know. Wouldn't like to assume. But yeah, I did find it very interesting that Louis was just caught out. It's whipped. Is that what they say? Is that, like, he just had no backbone, and it was disappointing, because I mean he's not my kind of guy anyway, but this is one of the things that we're seeing, that there's so many women that are single because there are so many men that will not stand up for something. Women have got more of a backbone these days than a lot of men. What has happened? And this is something that's really, really needs to be explored. Why is it women? I mean, there's the Olivia Dean song, Come and Be the Man I Need. You know, we're making our own money, we've got our own homes, we know what we bring to the table, we've got our kids, we're doing life, and a lot of us are choosing to do it alone because we are not finding the men out there that are going to show up. And there was something that, I can't remember which one it was, the ginger dude, I think his name is Justin, from LA, and he was saying, that a man's role is to provide for the woman, but it's not about him providing everything. It's about providing her with that safety. Now, I don't know one woman, and I know a lot of women around the world from very, very different cultures, very different socioeconomic backgrounds. There's not a woman I know that would not want a man to protect her. And this is what a lot of them were saying. And if you look beyond what's actually there and published out on the screen. Now, I've made a documentary of Channel 4 before, and I know how bad the editing can get and how manipulative a lot of editors are. I was disgusted by what happened when the documentary that I was in went out. And I was so angry. I cannot tell you how angry I were with Channel 4. It was not what I signed up for. Again, naivety, great content edited out because it made sense, and I realised there was an agenda to it, again, with everything that's produced. And this is one of the reasons why I liked what Harrison, HS Tiki Toki, said. He goes, there's no editing this. Whereas there will be so much editing with the Netflix, with the BBC and all of the other mainstream media. There's no editing of these YouTube manosphere guys, because what they say is what they say. It's going out, it's going live, and people are hearing it. And there is just a way in which they're showing up for themselves, and they will be called on it. People are calling them. There are people out there hating on them. And, some of their views and some of the things they said, I was like, wow, okay, I can see why people hate you. I really don't agree with what you just said. And I think that what they're saying in the heat of the moment, when they're really, really riled up, that, you can tell that things are coming out of their mouth where they're actually not considering how it will be taken. But then they are also saying a lot of things where they know exactly what's going to happen. And that's what they're doing. They're looking for that clickbait. They are looking for people to follow them, to engage with them, to hate on them. Because, again, like me, there are lots of people out there that do not agree with a lot of things I say. They do not agree with a lot of things I write. And I love it when I get the haters in some ways, because it gives me free content. I get to recycle their hatred, and the more they hate on me, then the more it just puts up my ratings and honestly, I get so much free content. I don't even have to think about creating content a lot of the time, because it's like, great. I remember there was a review of my first book, Friday Bridge. I got a 1 out of 5 review for it. I was like, yeah, I know who that is. I mean, if you'd have seen the spelling and the grammar, it was absolutely atrocious. But it was the guy who accused me of, it was the guy I went up against in the courtroom in Scotland. And the thing that he was accusing me of, well, let's just put it this way. If I was able to do what he was accusing me of, I could put Ronda Rousey on her backside in less than 3 seconds. There is no way that I would have been able to do that. Ronda Rousey wouldn't be able to do what he accused me of doing. And it was just so funny, because this is the thing, when we're writers and we're putting ourselves out there, or we're content creators, we're putting ourselves out there, then we are opening ourselves up. It takes a certain amount of courage to put your name to an article, or your face and your name to content out there on the internet, which is why a lot of people don't do it. It's why a lot of people stay safe, and why they're not controversial. And it's one of the reasons why we do cover this in the Author Academy, because we want people to know that their voice matters. We want them to start thinking about, how can I be completely true to myself, and how can we actually reach the people we want to reach and make a positive difference in the world. Whether that's going to create hatred or not is irrelevant, because at the end of the day, if you think and believe a certain thing, you've got to that through the education and the life experiences that you've been through. Now, I am going to go on to some of the other bits about the show. I'm just paying very much close attention to time, because we do have the news and the ads on every half an hour. And I do have to find my music. And I did actually have the song Olivia Dean, Come Be the Man I Need, but I can't find that, as I said. I have quite, like I said, I've got 8 songs lined up for you. But there's one, they're not going to be in order, but let's just see if I can find, here's one of them. Because one of the things that they were talking about on this Manosphere program was how women have the advantage over men, because women are born beautiful. And Justin was saying that the guy from LA, who has a one-sided monogamy relationship where he can sleep with as many women as he likes, where the wife doesn't. Sometimes she joins them. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is like, I mean, I'm a monogamist, and I know that there's so many different types of relationships out there these days. I mean, I hear some of these phrases and I'm like, I have no idea what that means. And I feel like a real dinosaur. I really do. I'm just like, wow. But it's true that they actually do. As women, men are very visual. We know that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I am going to come on and I'm going to talk about the book Man Up that I curated with Steve Whittle of Tough to Talk. And I'm going to come on to that shortly. But this first song of today, I have found one of the songs. It's not in the right order, so we're just going to have to run with it today. It's by Teddy Swims, and it's about losing control. I just felt it was really appropriate for what the guys were talking about in the Manosphere. So I'm going to play that and see if I can figure out what's going on. I'm going to also have some of my green tea and honey. Oh, my witch's brew. And I will tell you about my witch's brew in a second. Bear with me once. Here we go. Here is Teddy Swims and Lose Control. There we go. Apparently we make a mess of the men. But it's like, I don't know. You gotta... We do, as women, my mother-in-law used to call it, she goes, we've got our tackle. Like if you want to get something you've done your own way, and this is like a powerhouse Egyptian woman. She was like, so she had this thing Like she used to say, she goes, of course babies are cute, because you wouldn't want to love them otherwise, would you? Now, I don't find babies cute. I really don't. I think some babies are really ugly. I know that's not a very popular opinion, but I look, I'm like, yeah, it's baby. Like my boys, how they got through babydom. And I mean, I was looking forward to them being a toddler. It might nod to my mischievousness, but yeah. Babies, not so much fun, are they really? I mean, what do? They just sleep, eat. I mean, like, they do suck us dry, ladies, don't they, really? With those of us who breastfeed. And I was actually speaking to a lady the other day about who has opted for a C-section. Now, my views on C-sections, I had one. And people are opting for them because you're in quick and you're out and you get baby in your arms. And it's like, yeah, but I don't get that. Because one of the things that we haven't been taught is that when you give birth naturally and you push this baby out, we create a vacuum within our bodies. Which then, once baby is out, our body is flooded with all those happy chemicals, right? You don't get that with a C-section. And there's no wonder there's so much postnatal depression in the world now following having had a C-section. We're not flooding our bodies with all the happy hormones. Naturally, our bodies are designed. Now, whether you believe in God or not is, just take a look at the engineering that goes into our bodies. Our bodies are amazing. And, oh, gosh, like, how can you not love your body? Okay, you might have lumps and bumps and wobbles in certain areas, but when you actually take the moment to look at your body and to honour it, you just say, God, I'm amazing. I'm a miracle. And we do take it for granted that people will get, that will just get pregnant. Lots of people can't get pregnant. And now this month is endometriosis month. And for those of you who have been with me the last couple of weeks, you'll have heard me reading from my book, Owning Our Ovaries, which I did with other women around the world. And we are raising money with every book sold for endometriosis. Now, there is controversy at the moment with endometriosis, I think it's South Coast, because there have been there is an author, and I don't know whether she is backing onto the J.K. Rowling thing, where she thinks if she criticises, then she will get a lot more followers. But there is a lady, an author, who has come out and criticised Endometriosis South Coast because the Endometriosis South Coast have appointed a man to head up the top of who has actually become this the appointment, and Steph Richards is the guy that's been appointed the head of the Endometriosis South Coast. But a novelist, Amanda Craig, who I've never heard of, and this is something about being an author. Everyone thinks you will automatically know every author in the world. It's like, oh, have you heard of so-and-so? Oh, do you know so? No, I don't know every author in the world. I really don't. I wouldn't want to know that many people. Those of you who've seen my socials, you'll know that I don't have many followers. I don't engage very much on socials. I have my own personal, and I have my business. My VA deals with all of my business platforms. I like a quiet life, ladies and gentlemen. I like, having less drama in my life. There is enough drama that I'm researching and enough stuff that I'm writing about for my books and articles that I'm writing and building my business. If I was going to spend all my time on social media, I wouldn't have the time to build my businesses. But this Amanda Craig, who has published 9 novels and was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2021, spoke out after Steph Richards was named as the Parliamentary Engagement Officer for Endometriosis South Coast. Endometriosis, as many of us know, who know people or are involved and have seen what's been going on. I know that we've got the Endo March coming up soon, or it's just gone. Like I said, I've been in bed all week. I'm a bit disorientated. But it is one of those really chronic, painful gynecological conditions. And it says here that it's where cells similar to those in the lining of the uterus grow in other parts of the body, and it affects 1 in 10 women. Now, this novelist, Amanda, suffered from acute endometriosis in her 40s and said the appointment of Richards was absolutely ridiculous. She added, "It's as ridiculous as someone purporting to speak for black people when they're white." Now, my second book, those of you who know, is all about the Egyptian uprising. Now, some people would say, why on earth would a white English woman write a book about the Egyptian uprising? Well, one, I live there. Two, my family are Egyptian. My in-law family are Egyptian. I was part of the Arab world I still am part of the Arab world. My family, even though me and my ex-husband are now divorced, I still am very much in touch with a lot of my ex-husband's family. And so, living it, I have more credibility to write that book than the BBC or the ITV or the Al Jazeera journalists that covered it. Now, when people have read my book, a lot of the Arabs that have read it, have like gone, "Oh my gosh, they haven't said, oh my gosh. They're like, Wallah, we love you." My book is called Wallahi. And people have read it and they've gone, "It's like you have seen into our soul, you know us." So I really take that comment that Amanda Craig has written, really, it's like, well, why can't I? That is just, in some ways, I think that's quite ignorant on her part. And I don't agree with this guy being put as a parliamentary spokesman as for endometriosis. I don't agree with it. And they are saying that, men do get endometriosis. No, it's not very common. It's incredibly rare. And the research that I've done so far shows that there have been it's so rare, and it's only come from men who have had a certain kind of therapy when it comes to prostate cancer. Now, I'm still researching this. My views might change once I get more research. We don't know, but this is the thing about it. We are all evolving. Our knowledge is growing every single day. Why should we not speak about what it is that we're thinking, and then share it so that other people that hear it can then come back to us and say, well, actually, here's a piece of research. You might want to look at that. Here's something that I've experienced. This is why I experienced it. And this is what I learned from it. When we don't speak up and we don't speak out, we don't engage in a conversation. We can't learn. When we shut everybody down, none of us are learning. And it shows that if we have to shut everybody down, then it shows such a lack of maturity and a lack of respect for other people who have been through something we haven't. They've learnt something we haven't. I'm not going to sit there and argue with people who have done their PhD in a certain subject unless I can sit there and go, well, actually, I appreciate the research that you've done, and then I can give my own experience and things that I've learned about. There's a lot of people that talk about equality, diversity and inclusion, or diversity, equity and inclusion, depending on which words you want to say and which order you want to put them in. Again, depending on which part of the world you're in. Most of the people I've met that work in equity, diversity, inclusion, they've only ever lived in one country. They haven't got a multi-diverse community. You look at their LinkedIn profiles, it's like, yep, okay, so there's no diversity. How many languages do you speak? Okay, you only speak one. Okay, how many religions have you studied? How many kinship systems have you studied? How much anthropology have you done? And they haven't done any of it. All they've done is an EDI course, got certified by the CPD, and now they're an EDI expert. That is not an EDI expert unless you have lived and worked and breathed in lots of different countries around the world and you have immersed yourself in those cultures. How can you class yourself as an EDI expert? If you're only fighting for one person or you're only championing one person, then you're not really honouring what EDI actually means. And it's like a lot of these feminists who will hate the manosphere. You know, I get it. You know, that some of these men, they were really aggressive when they're in their conversations. And the dude from the radio show, I can't remember what his name is now. I'm like brain fog. Really, really aggressive. And some of the things he said, I'm like, whoa, dude. And they've got these girls in the studio. And he was really nasty to one of them, who he said that, you know, she was fat and that she was ugly. She had no contribution to the female populace, because, you know, no guy's going to want her because she's fat. And I'm like, okay, that's really nasty. You know, what is it that has made her that way? Yeah, has she got an illness? Has she got trauma? Does she just love food? You know, why is it that he thinks that she has no value? This is the thing, when we're listening to people, a lot of us are not hearing what's not being said. We're not hearing or seeing what's beyond it. Now, when Louis did his questioning and he looked into the backgrounds of these guys, one of the things he didn't realise was that the mums were either single, traumatised, or they weren't safe to be a woman. Now, if that is the case and these men have grown up seeing that in their mum, and they're seeing their mums hustling and providing everything for themselves, you kind of want your sons to grow up to be better men than their dads. And this is the thing, I really wanted to play Dax's song, and it's not ideal, but I'm going to see if I can improvise, because I think that this song, if you've not heard Dax's song, then you really do need to hear it. I think I'm going to do this. Bear with me 1 second. Dawny's on a mission. We're not going to be beaten by the system. Yeah. Sorry, I had another song in my head then. Red Hot Chili Peppers, that's all I'm going to say. But these guys have grown up seeing their mum in situations that they don't ever want to see their wife in, or the mother of their children in. So they're hustling and they're creating abundance. Now, whether they're doing it in ethical ways or not, they want to be able to provide. And that you have to respect that. And it comes down to something that we learn in a lot of business development and a lot of sales training course. There is an abundance out there. And the problem that with a lot of business owners is that they think that there's a scarcity of money. And there's one quote that always gets me, is that even a smack addict will go out and find money to pay for their habit. If we truly want the things we say we want, we're going to go out there and we're going to get what we want. There are no excuses. You know, if somebody with nothing can go out there, someone who's living on the streets, no food, no clothing, if they can go out there and get the money for their next hit, then those of us who have got all of the creature comforts, the house, the food, the clothes, you know, the social media, etc., if we cannot go out there and get the money that we need to provide for ourselves, what are we doing if a smack addict can do it? That is something that needs to really be taken into, and this is what the guys were talking about. But Louis didn't go down that route. Louis did not press that. He didn't find out more about their mums. It was just, I mean, he might have done it. Might have been edited out. We don't know, because we don't know what's on the editing room floor. So, you know, there was a lot wrong with the journalism that Louis. I mean, I used to like the guy. Now I'm just like, really? Seriously? Is that all you've got? Is that all you've got, Louis? Really? I mean, I know it's a different kind of Louis, but last week I played Cara Emerald Pack Up the Louis. Yeah, I think Louis needs to pack it up, because, like, there was no edge. There was no investigation. It was just, let's just follow them around. Like, oh, let me just follow them around and just look at them and, just be intimidated by them. That was the vibe he was giving off. He was giving off a disgusted vibe, not a curious vibe. He's a journalist. Why is he not curious? Why isn't he pressing? Why isn't he getting to the heart of the matter? Why isn't he going there? And we saw the HS Tiki Toki with his mum. And he was his mama's boy. He's a mama's boy. He really is. He might, if my son spoke to me the way he spoke to his mum, there would be an eyebrow raised. I only have to raise my eyebrow. I don't have to shout at my boys. I really don't. But I've just realised, I did the news, didn't I? I'm pretty sure I did the news. I've gone off on one, haven't I? You can tell I've not been in the studio for a while. But I will play that. I've got, I can't read. I haven't got my glasses on. I've got about 15 minutes. But again, it's like, what has happened to the journalism? We are seeing pandering to, people that really don't need pandering to. We've seen people lose their voice. There's no critical analysis. And it's like, if there's no critical analysis in the journalists that are out there being paid this money to write for these newspapers, and this is where people are getting their information from, it really makes you wonder why. Who is controlling it? Now, those of us who are awake, not woke, we will understand where it's coming from. And this is the other thing about what happened in this Inside the Manosphere. There were some ideas that were branded conspiracy theories that if you actually do your research, you'll actually know that a lot of what they were saying is correct. But, I'm a conspiracy theorist, apparently. I don't care. I don't care whether people call me that, because a lot of the time when I have said something is going to be happening, or I've said that this is happening, and people go, no. Give it 6 months, give it a year, give it 2 years, and it happens. When I lived up in Sheffield and I was on the radio with Howie on Radio Sheffield, I lived out in Egypt, and he actually asked me, Dawn, how do you always know what's going to happen? I'm like, because I pay attention. I do my research. We look at history. When we read about history, when we read what's not written, and when we ask smart questions, we become smarter people. When we ask the questions and we see beyond. Now, going back to Louis' physique, okay, because when him and Harrison first got together, one of the questions that Louis asked him was, what do you think? Do you think I'm a man? And Harrison looked him up and down. Now, compared to each other, I know who'd win in an arm wrestle. But we also, those of us who have also watched some of these fitness programs like Ninja Warrior or Physical 100. Physical 100, if you haven't seen it, it's incredible. And what they do, they get, I think it's Korean. I know they've got an Asia 100. So they're getting people from all over Asia coming together, and there's 100 of them. And these are the people that are top of their field. You've got MMA artists, you've got CrossFitters, you've got bodybuilders, firefighters, Olympic champions, they're across where they're all sports. And what is really, really interesting is who wins, because people think that if they're all butch and muscly and they've got the bigger the muscles, they're gonna win. They're not. If there's no cardio, it doesn't matter how strong you are, you're not gonna be able to still compete. I know that I'm not a runner. If you put me in a race, a few years ago, you put me in a 10K, I'd be all right. I can do a 10. I used to be able to do a 10K in about 45 minutes. Now, it'll probably take me about 4 hours. Well, today it probably would. But, it'll probably take me over an hour today to do a 10K run if I finished it. But you put me in a swimming pool and asked me to swim 2 kilometres, 3 kilometres, 3.5 kilometres. I can just keep going. And, I think my personal best at the moment, because I used to do a lot of training, I can do about 2,000 kilometres in just over or just under an hour. And that's in a very small pool. That's not even in a 25 metre pool. So there's a lot of turns that I'm having to do that I wouldn't normally do if I was in a 25 metre pool. But what the physical 100 shows us is that, these manosphere, these guys in the manosphere, they were all different shapes. Yes, HS was really big. Justin was ripped. The radio presenter, not so much. And the Edwards guy, he wasn't ripped either. And they were in their 20s and their 30s. There was not one of them in their 40s. And I wonder when they get into their 40s and they've got kids, how they're going to evolve. Because when we look at the earlier videos of these men in the manosphere, oh, there's Chewy. Bear with me 1 second. Chewy. She's keeping guard. Bear with a second. I'm just going to have to find a song. Keep her quiet. This is really not a good day today, is it? Oh dear. This is live radio, folks. Really is. I'm going to play this song and sort this out. Hang on, I've found it. I don't know if it's going to work well. I don't know if it's a good one, but we are going to sort this out. Oh dear. Welcome to Real Live Radio. That's not it either. We've got some dead air on the radio, Dawn. That's not good, is it? Let me just play this for you. Wow, the first time I heard that song, I just had to sit there and just process, because as a mother of sons, I never want my boys to feel like that. I never want them to feel that their feelings don't matter and that they don't matter, and they're, and this is the thing about when we're looking inside the world of men and what it means to be a man in today's world. I mean, he touched on it there about the men going off to war. And I am going to go into that afterwards because there's a chap that I met, Ben Price, who's the Kingmaker, Coach Ben Price. Look him up. He's on all on socials. We were talking about, the things that have been happening to men and how they're not allowed to be. They've got to be a certain way, and women have got to. No, we all show up in our own different ways, but the generational curse and the generational wounds that are passed on through, lots of different things. And this is where we look at this inside the manosphere, the things that these young boys witnessed and what they've grown into. It's not surprising, and this is why I found that program. I'm not going to call it a documentary because it wasn't. It was just so poor. I don't know. And one woman said she was so sad about it, and I'm like, why are you sad? There's nothing in there that should be surprising. Any of us that are paying attention to what's going on, mothers, women. Mothers of daughters, parenting has become such a lazy pastime. I mean, if you haven't read my article on the Dose of Dawn, the latest one about saying no inside the home, well, go and read it. dawnbates.com/dose of dawn. But when we see parents are ending up bribing their kids these days. They're not interested in parenting. They're interested in being best friends. And when they're older, that might be the case. But when they're little, they're not your best friends. If your children are your best friends, then you've got some growing up to do. You really, really have. Because your 5-year-old should not be your best friend. That is a toxic, codependent relationship with your child. That's not healthy for you or for them. That might be, that might not be a very popular viewpoint. It might be. We'll see. Again, if you want to text the show, the number is 07354 770 837. If I'm triggering you, let me know. If you agree with me, let me know. If you watch the Manosphere, let me know. If you've got a son or a daughter that, you know, finds what's going on in the Manosphere, that's such a funny name. If you want to send me your views, then let's make sure that you send it through on 07354 770 837. Right, there's the news. Interesting how they're referencing the take back of books in schools and the screen time, because it reminds me of the article about how Sweden is going back to books, and they're seeing better results. I mean, I think it came out last year, but there's recently on Saturday, the Swedish state that invested millions into all of these laptops and tablets, you know, all these whiteboards in schools. You know, they were struggling. Like, the kids started to struggle. We all know that. They've got screen time in the school. They've got screen time at home. And, you know, people are just tapped into their screens. And it's not good for their brains. We all know that. Then we're actually seeing there's been this huge thing where they're saying that the reading standards fell, but now it's increasing. And now they're also saying that their attention spans are increasing. The all-round well-being of the students in schools in Sweden is increasing. So will the rest of us catch up? Now, actually, speaking of catching up, I've been doing quite a bit of research since I've been back in Britain on, PTSD and trauma recovery, etc. And because some of the things that I was researching while I was sailing around the world, such as human trafficking and, you know, generational culture, generational wounding, and how the government's actions are creating a lot of trauma, and how they're utilizing that to actually prop up big pharma, etc. Because I do believe, and I need to do a bit more in the research department here to disprove or prove my hypotheses. But when we're seeing how the governments are behaving and the things that they're doing and how that is traumatizing, it's keeping us all sick, uneducated, poor, and living in fear of one another, which raises our cortisol levels. As we know, it makes us afraid of one another. We shouldn't be afraid of one another. You know, we're all... I traveled the world by myself for 8 years. I never felt afraid. And I was safe. And I found that people were very generous, very kind, very giving. And we're not taught that. We're not taught that people will support us. Now, I find that some of the things I hear about the different countries around the world, I'm like, yeah, that person's never been there. Like, I just don't agree with like how people perceive it, and people start talking about these countries like, have you been? How many times have you been? And they go, what? And I'm like, have you been? No. Well, how do you know what the country's like? Well, I saw it on the telly. It's called tell-a-vision, people. Because it's telling you a vision of the world that the programmers want you to believe about other people. That's not a good way to live. Stop trusting other people. This is the thing. People are going to have watched this Manosphere and they're not going to have thought about it. They're not going to do any critical thinking, any critical analysis, because of the way in which schools are dumbing us down. Now, those of us who were like getting caught up in our headphones and the wires, we invested in these earpod things. But when you actually do your research, I mean, I've stopped wearing mine, and I tell you what, the difference in my thinking capacity has increased. Now, that might scare a lot of people that know me, but happy days. The way in which the Bluetooth works, and like you've got it, all of these electro waves like playing out. I mean, I'm not a scientist by anyone's imagination. I even set the science lab on fire when I was at school. Yeah, I know. I'm not a scientist. I read popular science, and I really have to pay attention. I can read lots of different things, but again, as I've said before, I can be studying my courses that I do because I'm constantly learning, and I can read a sentence and I can understand all the words in the sentence, but it's when they put certain words together in the sentence or in the paragraph and I'm like, yeah, no, that I need to go read that again. And I can read the same sentence and paragraph many times over because I'm dissecting it. And when you're looking at what these earpods are doing to your brain, go and have a look. Go and find the science. Go and figure it out, because you might want to think twice about wearing them and bring back getting caught up in your wires again. Now, going back to what I was saying about how the Kingmakers and Coach Ben Price, chap I met in London, we were talking about the initiations that young men are going through and the things that happen. Now, on this Manosphere program, you had two young guys on the beach in LA, fans of this Justin guy, and they were talking about why they admired him, and they were saying, it was like how he just chooses and he goes after what he wants. It was never, not one of them said it was about the way he disrespected women. Not one of them. They weren't in it to, belittle women. And that's what the narrative about the Manosphere is all about, how they treat women and how they disrespect women. But when you look beyond it and you start scratching at the surface and you actually watch and learn about these people. Now, I know about the Tate brothers and the human trafficking. Again, it's something that I researched when I was traveling around the world following the human trafficking routes. Just a case, an example, when I was in Winnipeg in Canada, I was learning about the 4,000 women that had gone missing. The 4,000 Indigenous women had gone missing. Where had they gone? But what people were not reporting on was that those 4,000 women were only 11% of the women that had gone missing. They weren't talking about the Caucasian women that had gone missing, or the Asian women, or the African descent women, or the black women, or however you want to call it, people of colour. They weren't talking about any other women, just the Indigenous women. They were only 11. Those 4,000 women that had gone missing were only 11%. Why were they not talking about the other women? Now, we know that North America has paying lip service to the Indigenous communities. Well, some of us do. I can't say everybody because that would just be wrong. Because of what's happened with the Indian schools. And if you don't know about the Indian schools in North America, brace yourself before you do the research on that. That was shocking, but not surprising. And then we wonder why Indigenous communities around the world, because it's very similar to what's going on around that. You had the Crusades, the missionaries, people going out to different nations, spreading the word of Christianity. And when you look at what was going on in North America, you can clearly see why there's such an apologist narrative to the Indigenous community and why they only focused on those 4,000 women. But what it shows you is why they're doing it, because it's such a big problem with women and girls going missing. And how we are just treated as commodities, and there is sex slaves going on. We all know that. To not know that would just be where have you been for centuries. And so what is being tried to be projected about these guys in this manosphere is that they only see women as something to should we say have fun with, or to use for their own gratification. That's not what was going on. And this is one of the things I really had hoped that Louis would have pushed a little bit further, because when we look at the relationship and the stories that they told us about their mothers, and we look at what's going on in society. Now, one of the songs I wanted to play for you was POD, Youth of a Nation. Now, I've got the team of Radio Cardiff messaging me while I'm playing the news and the ads, helping me finding all of these songs. So if we don't find them today, then again, they will be here next week. But these are the youth of the nation. We have created a society globally where people are just, they're all products of society. There are some of us who choose to think critically. There are some of us who choose to do our own research. There are some of us who just prefer to just take things at face value. Never. I'm that annoying child in class that would go, why is that then? Always got my hand up asking another question. It's what led to me being bullied. But I was not going to be just, even like, I question everything. Those of us who follow Islam, you know, we're even told in the Quran, in Surah Baqarah, you know, question everything. Do not follow your forefathers blindly. You know, this is so explicitly written. Do not follow them blindly. We should never follow anyone blindly, whether we're Muslim or not. You know, we shouldn't just take things at face value. Always question. You know, because if we're not questioning, we're not learning, we're not discovering that about ourselves. Think of it as a selfish act. I want to be the very best version of myself, so I'm going to ask better questions. I'm going to find out for myself. I'm going to find out what's going on inside my body. Now, I told you that I'd tell you about my witch's brew. So while I've been sick this week, and I'm going to give a big shout out to my friends, Jessie, Pat, Catherine and Richard, who have taken such great care of me this week, dropping off food and ordering food for me, because I've just, not even, poor Chewy, honestly, it's like, let's just go outside and we'll come back in again. And she didn't get a walk. It was just like, go to the toilet, come back in. Bless her, she really did not get a walk, and she's been laying by my side. It's been wonderful. I felt very looked after and very blessed. But the one thing I have been making is my witch's brew. This is what my friends have called it. Again, it's just natural herbs, because I know the healing properties of them, and I know that, you know, there are certain things that our body needs. You know, I have my mushroom gummies in the morning, I have my multivitamins, I have my collagen shake, but I also have the medicine that I make for myself. Now, I always have fresh ginger, lemons, I get green tea, manuka honey, and then I get my star anise, my cinnamon bark, my cloves, my nutmeg. What else do I put in there? Cayenne chili pepper, some turmeric, and I put it all in this pot and I boil it all up, and you know, and then I just drink. I drink a mug of that on the hour, every hour. Well, as long as I'm not sleeping. I have slept, ladies and gentlemen. I've slept so much. My body obviously needed it. You know, I've been really pushing it. I'm doing a lot of healing over the last year. But whatever it is that's knocked me on my backside, well, let's just say that it stopped me from reading, which, you know, my boys found really quite impressive. And they're like, wow, anything that can stop you from reading, Mama, that must be good. But again, like every night before I go to sleep, I have a spoonful of honey just to soothe the throat. And I do wake up in the morning and I have been coughing, so it's like, again, spoonful of honey, soothe the throat. But again, natural ingredients. I don't buy food or drinks that are not natural. I make all my own sauces. And this is the thing, when we look back at, you know, how we've gotten so far away from who we are at our core, who we are at our soul, we can understand why there are so many generational curses and so many generational wounds. And again, it comes back to this initiation. What are we, you know, and getting back to nature and fire and looking at what it is that has happened in the world. How many of us spend time out in nature? How many of us actually, you know, this is one thing that HS Tiki Toki, I just think this name is great. It's annoying because it's like Tiki Toki, you think of like Hello Kitty. Well, I do anyway, like, you know, like these Fireman Sam and all these Fisher Price toys. But here's this like guy that's all beefcake and quite violent in some ways. You know, they hid it, but, you know, we kind of, whether it was edited that way, which it probably was, but when you look at what he was saying, you know, get outside, they're walking, you know, he's working out outside. They're all addicted to their phones, which was really quite obvious. But the thing is, when we're in nature and we actually harness the power of nature, we can actually increase our vibration. Now, this might be a bit woo-woo for some of you, but when I was talking to Coach Ben Price, the Kingmaker, we were discussing that how society has traumatized so many of us. Now, going back to the bit about the government and how we've been traumatized and made to fear one another. When you think back to World War One, you have these men being sent off to war. The women had to step up. They had to run the farms. They had to raise the children. They had to do everything. Be the nurses, be the doctors, drive the ambulance. Well, they didn't drive the ambulances then, did they? That would have been quite something. There were no ambulances in World War One. Well, not motorised ones. But, there might have been one or two. But anyway, not what we know as an ambulance today. But then you've got these men coming back, having been so traumatised. But they were fighting up close and personal. If they were going to kill someone, it was with a bayonet. Or it was out on one of these beautiful ships. I am a sucker for a tall ship, one of these galleons, these Chinese junk ships. And they were fighting up close, daggers, but then they would have like the cannonballs. They were there in it. Then you've got World War II, but you've got these men that have come back from war and they're so traumatised that they can't function properly because they're dealing with the monsters in their head, which was another song I was going to play by Welshly Arms. If you haven't heard that song, go and listen to it. I'll see if I can get it up when we go into the ads and the news on half the hour. The shows are going to be over before I find my music. Oh my God. You must think I'm such an amateur, but I've not been in the studio for a while. And it's all, I came in this morning, I was like, wow, it's all clean, like such a difference. So whoever done it, kudos to the Radio Cardiff team there. But these men, they've gone and they've come back traumatised and they've seen that they've been displaced in a lot of jobs. There was... Then I was just thinking of a book that I wanted to share with you that talked about it. Hans J. Miraquai, and he was growing up being he was the only black child in Berlin during World War II. Amazing book. Let me see if I can find the title of that. But anyway, so these men, they've gone off to war, and they've come back, and then they go off. Their kids then go off to another war. They're going off into World War II. But this time we've got machines. They can fire from a distance. It's easier to kill from a distance now because of the technology, the machinery. And this is one of the things that Dax was talking about in his song. And this is why I love certain songs. It's they really do tell you about what's going on in society. If we just listen. And again, when I was trying to find songs a few weeks ago, if you remember, if you were with me, some of the songs that people were singing about, subjects that people were singing about, I'm like, oh my God, you're just giving away your power. You're begging someone to love you. Never beg anyone to love you. They're either going to love you or they're not. As long as you love yourself, and as long as you know that you are worthy of love, it doesn't matter whether, if someone doesn't see your value, that's on them. You need to keep going. Keep seeing your value. I was just about to say a word in Arabic, but I won't. But again, it's so these men they've gone off to war, they've come back, and again, they're traumatized like their dads were in the First World War. Some of them, it's their second war, and more trauma. We're seeing it with our veterans now. They're going off to these wars and they're coming back. And when I wrote, when I was coaching Jake Cosme, who wrote The Recipe, you can get the book on my website. He was a US Marine, and he talked about what it was like for him. He grew up with his family, quite strict, and then he goes into the military. He goes into school and then into the military, and then he comes out of the military. All his life, he's had people telling him what to do, where to go, when to eat, what to eat, and all of this. And then he comes out. He's got no support system. The people that were his brothers are either still in the military or they're no longer with us. That's a lot of trauma, and you have to unpack that. I'm using veterans, and then you've got Professor David Nutt, who's talking about, how we can use psychedelics to help with PTSD, and we're already seeing that magic mushrooms are actually helping with that. But we're not seeing it being used with people who are suffering from sexual violence and trauma. And again, it's all of this is, why are magic mushrooms not available? Why have they been made illegal? Now, having travelled the world, I've come back to Britain, I'm going, but why are we so behind? Because of Big Pharma. Okay, it's not going to be, I'm not totally against them. I do have my ibuprofen to help with the aches and pains. If I get a migraine, you can bet I'm going to take some codeine. But again, it's about looking at how all this layering of fear is going on and all this trauma that is being created by governmental decisions. The way in which they're playing with the economy. Like, go and read Naomi Prin's Collusion. And that book that I was just speaking to you about the Hans J. Masakai, the book he wrote was Destined to Witness. Brilliant book. Talks about, I just loved it so much. I picked it up when I went to a friend's wedding in Switzerland last year. It was the only English book on the bookshelf. It's like, I don't read German. And I can guess at it, but I don't read or speak it. But what was really fascinating is how he didn't realise he was the outsider, but on both sides. And that was really, really fascinating for me, how he wrote it and how it played out for him. And the whole way in which we are viewing things on screens. This is why I say to people, when you read a book or when you write something, you are taking that moment to just be still. You are having a meeting with yourself. You are allowing your brain to slow down and to think about things. If you're just reading a book and you're not thinking about what you're reading, you're not reading what's not written, you're not seeing the deeper messages, why are you reading the book? And when people say, I don't enjoy reading, no, you've just not found the right subject. You've not found the right genre. And this is the thing, when you do read and you do explore and you do get connected to yourself, you start thinking about what has made you you. What has, with these... with Ben, when we were going back and talking about these initiations and how the wars that have been going on, the trauma that's been created, and how certain things have been banned. I mean, if you read The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, or anything by Dr. Gabor Mate, The Body Says No, this, and look at how they're using psychedelics to actually heal. Why are we not doing that? Why are we not using that? Why is it Professor David Nutt? Why is his work made? It's such incredible work that the three of them are doing, not together. Well, Bessel van der Kolk and Gabor Mate are working together. But the work is so important, but you need to do the research. You need to understand how neurology works, like the neural pathways. I remember when my ex-husband had his brain tumour, I was given a leaflet. I was like, what's that for? They were like, so you can understand what's going on. I said, I'm not going to be able to understand what's going on with a trifold leaflet. What the heck is that? I need to understand what's going on. And they were like, well, it's complicated. I'm like, well, were you saying I am too thick to understand? Too thick to go and read? I went to the library, guys. I went and I got, books on brain trauma. I got books on neural pathways, neurology, cognitive behavioral therapy, I got books on the brain. Like, you should have seen the pile of books. Like, they actually thought I was studying for a neurology and neuroscience degree. But no, I'm just interested on how the brain works. And I remember, and this is not medical advice, but the drugs that they gave my ex-husband, phenytoin and Tegretol, they made him crazy, that he was like just a zombie. but he became really quite aggressive. And I was like, you're not taking those anymore. You don't need them. They've removed the tumour. For me, my thinking was, well, if I've got a hand that's septic, and it's because of the splinter that's still in my hand, just remove the splinter. My ex-husband's brain tumour seizures were only caused by the fact that he had a brain tumour, which was then removed. So by default, by logic, that if they've removed the thing that caused him the seizures, he should no longer have the seizures. So why does he need all this medication? And so I weaned him off them. And I had good reason. I did the research. I did the study. Now, I was told I was not smart enough to be able to understand it. That's why they give you these trifold leaflets. But if you want to learn something, you want to understand how the brain works, you want to know about cognitive dissonance, and you want to understand how our vibrational frequencies increase and decrease, then you need to read about it. There's no point just going watching the clickbait stuff on social media. There are some really great people to follow. I'm not saying there isn't. And social media can lead you to some great education. But it's about understanding the cycle of all of this. Why have these guys inside the manosphere become the men that they have? What is it that about society, not just about their families, but it is about their families. What is it about our own families? What is it that's allowing us to be afraid and condemn people? Like Mel Robbins says, let them. She's got her book, Let Them. And let them have their views. But let's us understand why. And part of that comes from reading. Part of that comes from learning to think critically, to analyse what it is that we're hearing, but we're not taught to analyse anymore. We're just taught to watch with our mouths open and our eyes wide, and the whole thing now is like they've got to make programs so unengaging that we're on our phones and watching a movie and listening to music, doing all the things. So our brains are tired. Once your brain is tired, you can't think. So I'm going to get off my little soapbox now, because we do have time for ads, and I do need to play you the news. So here are the ads, and I'll be back for the last half an hour shortly. Yes. Right, well, that was the news for you. Wow. Still no news on the music, so you've got me all for the 2 hours. Can't believe I've only played, was it 2 songs? Goodness gracious. That's a first. But I was thinking about where like all of this ties in to today, and the loneliness that some men feel and the pressure that they feel, and the hate that they get from a lot of feminists, or as I prefer, because I really want to make a distinction between feminism and the angry wounded women. Now I've always been somebody who fights for both sides. I will not just fight for men or just fight for women. I want to see everyone succeed, and I want to see equality. I don't want people treated the same. I want equality. And the thing is, a lot of people don't know the distinctions between that. And I remember when I was working with Steve Whittle, the founder of the Tough to Talk charity, and on the book that we did together called Man Up. Now, it's a controversial title, but it's a book about reducing male suicide and destroying the stigma one story at a time. Now, this book, all the royalties for this book go to the charity, and I can't believe how long ago it was that this book came out. It's just, Steve has done, Steve and the team at Tough to Talk have done an incredible job so far this year, and I am just so proud of everything that they have created, because the amount of work that it takes to bring a charity together, but also the work that they have, honestly, they blow me away with what they're doing. And it's been 3 years of Tough to Talk, and so far, what they've been doing, they've stayed focused on one thing, working before crisis. Now, if you don't follow Tough to Talk on socials, or you don't know Steve, then definitely connect with him. But in the last 3 years, they have trained 219 tough talkers and embedded real-world settings. Nearly 6,000 people have been supported across workplaces and communities. 38 early suicide interventions have been carried out safely by people on the ground. And they've been working inside organisations like UK Atomic Energy Authority, Balfour Beatty Vinci, Sir Robert McAlpine, the YMCA, S-Drug Hospital Services. And the thing is, when I worked on this book, I had a trilogy in mind. I have the Man Up trilogy. And the first one was this book about raising awareness of suicide. The second book is underway, where I'm looking for 50 men to be interviewed about what the difference between being male and being a man is. And because there is a difference. You can be a male all your life, but when do you become a man? When does a man know that he's a man? You know, and the reason why this book was inspired was when I sailed across the Atlantic, I hadn't seen my 2 boys for 5 weeks. Well, I hadn't seen them in person for longer than that, but it was 5 weeks from the last time I spoke to them, because obviously I was at sea. And when I'm at sea, it's like, do not contact me because I can't do anything. I will get to it when I get back, because the danger about knowing what's going on land when you're at sea is it can distract you. And if you're distracted at sea, accidents can happen. And my boys needed their mama. That's why I managed to get back on the boat after going overboard when I was in the Gibraltar Straits and lost my teeth. But I do have front teeth now. They are crowns. But I saw my son on the screen, my oldest son, and he had a mustache. I was like, what the holy cannoli? And I was lost for words, and he was laughing, and he was like, what do you think? I was like, oh my gosh, look at you. Your body's telling you that you're a man. Like, you're growing all of this fake. You've got a proper goatee. It was shocking, because he'd had like what we call the bum fluff, but now he had a full-on goatee, and I was like, wow. It's not society that told me that he was now a man. It wasn't him. It wasn't me. It wasn't his teacher. It wasn't anybody else. It was his body. And that's the thing. It's like our bodies evolve. But was he ready to be a man? The moment his dad walked out, he said, oh, you're the man of the house now. I was like, no. Do not pass on the responsibility you are not prepared to carry moving forward onto an 11-year-old boy. You do not do that. You know, like, do not if you're a man and you walk out the door on your family and you say to your son, you're the man of the house now, shame on you. And I will say that live on air. No, you do. If you are not man enough to carry the responsibility of your family, do not pass it on to a young boy. Ever. Ever. That is a pressure that they do not need. And it is covered in the Man Up book. Again, available from online bookstores or from my website, from Tough to Talk. If you go to Tough to Talk, you order it directly from them. It's better to order it directly from toughtotalk.com because they make more money for the charity. But when you read the book, you, as a woman, and this is the interesting about this book, more women are buying this book than men. Because we're learning more about how deeply men feel and what it is that men are going through. Now, there was a conversation that we had, and something Ben and I were talking about at Encore in London last week. Men don't have mental health issues. That's a very feminine thing because we just lump it all into one thing. Now, what it was saying is this is a vocabulary issue. Men have health worries. They have financial troubles, or they have, relationship issues. Men are quite precise. Men will tell you what is going on. They will give you, and this is the thing with Chris, who was writing about how he realised his mental health was accumulative. And it was like, he didn't realise he had mental health issues until he did a mental health training course for work. And then you've got Ben, who was at the hands of a really narcissistic woman. And when you look at the way in which women treat men today, I look at it and I just think, why? Why are we so vicious towards men? Why are we rejecting them when they want to help us? If they open a door for us, why are we so aggressive towards them? If a man offers to carry the shopping, why are we automatically assuming he's going to run off with the shopping? Why is it a man cannot be a gentleman anymore? It's not saying that we can't. They're not saying that we're incapable. They're just being a gentleman. And the other week I was walking, and I had to smile because I was walking along the pavement and there was a man coming towards me, and he was with his young son. And the father was teaching his son that if you see a woman walking or somebody elderly, you always walk on the outside, you protect them. How many men are teaching that to their sons? My boys know it. Oh, they are my boys. They'll always be my boys. But how many of us are teaching the men to walk on the outside? When you're walking past somebody on a pavement, I was always raised that men walk on the outside because they are the protectors. Now we have the protectors and the providers. This is what the manosphere was, ticky-tocky and, just in the air. They are the ones that provide. They're providing the safety, they're providing the abundance, they're providing the home and everything that their wife or their girlfriend and their family and their mothers need. There's nothing wrong with that. Why are we criticising men for doing that? I'd rather criticise men who are not doing it. Because why are you not providing for yourself and for others? We're all in a society, and this is one of the things about being in business. Being in business is a legacy. Being in business is an honour and a privilege. For us to be able to give back to others. It allows us the freedoms to, volunteer our time or to donate to charity. The more we earn, the more we learn, the more we earn. But the more we earn, the more money we make, the more we can give back. The more we have to pay in taxes, which, goes to war and war machines these days rather than the things it's really needed for. But don't get me off on that. It's a different show. But, we go through all of the chapters in the Man Up book. And you've got Adam talking about grief, how that impacted him. His story blew me. I was crying. I cried a lot bringing this book together because I did not realise that men felt this deeply. My dad was always very stoic, never expressed his emotions, never shared his love or his pride or anything like that verbally. As I got older, I realised he showed us love, but not the way in which the media tells them to show love. And then you've got Rob, who was isolated. That was, just the fact that he was such a genius, and it was the isolation that he felt because he couldn't connect with people, and I resonate with that. And then you have got some stories in there about abuse, and there was another chap in there Rob, who wrote about workplace bullying and how there was this woman who was his boss. God, honestly, when I read it, I identified so many women I knew like it that I'm someone, if I don't like the way you behave, I will stay away from you. If you come up to me at a meeting or a networking meeting and I don't like you, I'll make excuses and I'll leave. I'm not going to be rude. I'm just not going to be I'll be civil, but I won't be rude, but I won't stay around you. I don't like your energy. I don't like the way you behave. And when I read Rob's chapter, I was like, yeah, I see women behaving like that. Because they think that we need matriarchy. No, we don't need the matriarchy. That is just the other side of the patriarchal coin. Why would we do to men what has been done to us? Why would why do we see the Zionists doing to the Palestinians what was done to the Jews? Why do we see that? Why do we see what we call the reverse racism? Why do we see the fact that I've had employees say I don't we see it. What's that program? The Good Life or something. The Good Fight. They tackle what they're doing is where you've got an all African American law firm that started employing white lawyers, and then what it was doing, we were researching it for identity in one of the modules I was studying, and the cultural divisions and the programming of society, but how you'll pay someone more to keep them because you know that that's going to help you get a certain award. So, for example, this African American law firm was gaining a lot of contracts because it was a diverse. It was one of the only minority-owned law firms in Chicago. And so they were getting certain awards given to them by the government or by certain organizations to prove that they were ticking all these boxes, etc. And it was so interesting to see how that all played out. You also have psychosis in here, you've got addiction, but again, like the whole book, it's such a powerful book. And I know that I published it, but for these men to show up and to share their stories in order to say to other men, you're not alone. This is what I did. I went through this. I got through it. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Read my story. I'm here. I'm sharing with you. I'm showing up for you. And I'm showing up for the other boys. Now, I wanted this book to be a resource for men, but what we found is that a lot of women are buying the book because they want to understand men more. And it's absolutely vital. We've even had one lady who's a hostage negotiator who has said that she will, having read this book, she will never negotiate with men in the same way she did before. It's completely changed the way she does it, and she's much more effective now. And so I'm really proud of this book, and I'm really, really proud of the work that Steve and everybody at Tough to Talk are doing, because when this book was published a couple of years ago, we knew that every 40 seconds another life is lost to suicide. 75% of those are men. That is really sad. Really, really sad. And we need to protect our men in a different way to the way in which we women need protecting. And again, bringing it back to Louis and HS Tiki Toki, who do I think will be able to protect me more, Louis or HS Tiki Tok? Looking at them and the way in which Louis was so intimidated and so fearful, I wouldn't rely on Louis Theroux to protect me. No way. I mean, he was so standoffish. I would not have faith that if it came down to the wire, he would not be able to protect me. And that is what a lot of women are looking for. And that is the gap in which these young lads in the manosphere, they're filling that gap. They're filling that void. They don't want a lot of women do not want men who they are stronger than that man. Physically, emotionally and mentally. We've had to grow up and we've had to fight for ourselves, a lot of us women, and we've had to protect ourselves because the men in our lives that either haven't been there or they have been the one that have abused us or traumatized us. And that, I think, that is where Louis could have done a much better job. And I would be happy to speak on this. I'm talking about it now on Radio Sheffield. This is not Radio Sheffield. This is Radio Cardiff, 98.7 FM. And I realised I haven't found my jingles either today. But yeah, I thought it was a very poorly made programme. Really, really badly made. Production-wise, it was slick. But yeah, it was wetter than an Irish weekend, as they say. But it is now, we're now coming up to the end of the show. And I would love to hear your thoughts. I mean, if you go onto the Radio Cardiff Facebook group and let me know your thoughts. If you want to message me on the show, it's 07354 770 837. This is the Literary Lounge with me, Dawn Bates. And I am really looking forward to seeing what the future holds for this manosphere and how we can see it showing up, because one thing that all of these men had was freedom of speech. And we say we live in a world where we don't have freedom of speech. We do have freedom of speech. It's just that we give away our power to others, and we think we can't say certain things. And these are the things that I was agreeing with these lads. You know, they do have the freedom of speech. There are platforms that say, no, we're not going to accept it, and they delete their profiles, or they ban from certain platforms. Now, I've asked questions, very relevant questions in certain environments. The other week I think I mentioned it on a show a few weeks ago. I was removed from a 4-part seminar series on discrimination. I was there to learn about discrimination and how that is present in today's world, in business and in safeguarding. But I realized it wasn't about that. It was an internal echo chamber of like-minded people. I don't want to be around like-minded people because there's no growth. I want to be challenged. I want to learn. I want to be around open-minded, respectful, mature people. Now, did these guys in the manosphere, did they represent themselves well when they got angry and aggressive? No. If they had delivered what they said in a calmer way, would it have been more acceptable? If they had the vocabulary and the discernment of saying what it is that they believe and what it is that they say, would they get as many views? Would they make as much money? No. Would there be as many people that know about them? No. These guys know what they're doing. And the thing is, they're doing it a lot smarter than a lot of us realise. We've got to make sure that when we're actually getting people like Louis condemning them, or just going, oh, I'm just here to observe, because that's all he was doing. He was just observing. He was just amplifying. There would be no documentary about them if they weren't controversial, and if they were not hitting striking a chord with a lot of the young lads of today. But again, going back to the 2 young lads in LA that were following Justin, they weren't mentioning about how he was critical of women or the amount of women he was sleeping with or anything. All they were interested in the way in which, why they followed them, is because he was taking control of his own destiny. He was going out there, he was making the money, he came from poverty. He came from trailers in a part of the States, and he then started building a steel empire. He's now worth millions. I think it was like over 30 million this man is worth. And that is what they're teaching the young lads. They're teaching them how to make money out of the 9 to 5, and that is where their attraction lies for a lot of young men. I don't think I would see many young men wanting to be like Louis Theroux in the way in which he handled that interview. Well, it wasn't even an interview, was it? I mean, how many questions did he ask them? Not many. Like, it was such a poor program, and the people who thought it was really sad, I get why they thought it was sad on some level. I get why some people are angry, because now these people have had more amplification, but they were going to get it anyway. We have to really start thinking critically and start analysing why these people are attracting the people that they are, and why they have the audiences they have. Why are they learning to make money that way? Even if this tiki-toki doesn't agree with OnlyFans girls and would be mortified if his own daughter did it, he knows how to make money from it. And if he didn't, someone else would. But he openly says he disagrees with it. He's openly saying, I don't agree with it. I think that it's shameful and all the other. He would absolutely hate for his daughter to do it. But he knows how to make money from it. But what they're all in that sphere, they are doing whatever it is that they want and respecting each other for doing it, regardless of what other people think. That is a level of freedom so many people don't have. So that is it from me today. It might not be what a lot of people were expecting. I know that I'm going to meet somebody, they're going, I can't believe you thought of that. But people who know me, they're not going to be surprised. Again, look at what's not being said. Look at what is being said. Learn to discern. Well, that's a good meme, isn't it? Learn to discern. It's like, mean what you meme. If you want freedom of speech, then you have to allow freedom of speech, regardless of whether we agree with it or not. Louis does not have freedom of speech. Absolutely not. He was silenced on so many issues on that show. And kudos to HS Tiki Toki for doing it. Do I agree with all of his views? No. But I give respect to him in many areas. And the fact that he listens to his mama, good boy. Anyway, we're now coming up to the top of the hour. I hope that I will be much better next week. I apologize for the lack of music today. You've just had to listen to my congested voice, sore throat. I think I've done actually all right. I have not coughed and sneezed. I do have, this will probably make you laugh, I do have a roll of Blue Roll here, thanks to Don't Give a. And I haven't had to use it once, so that's good. And I was going to be having a guest with me here today, but I just thought that it's just not right to have somebody around me while I'm here and feeling really sick. I'm not actually feeling that sick, actually. I actually do feel much better. And again, positivity, when you learn about how words have power. I was walking here this morning going, I am strong, I am healthy, I've got this. Affirmations, they do work. They really, really do work. Anyway, I'm going to put the ads on. Thank you for being with me here today. And I will hopefully have you tuning in with me next week, and where we will probably be continuing on the feminist route, because I do feel that is something that needs to be addressed, especially with some of the books that I'm seeing coming out at the moment. But there we go. Anyway, have a really great weekend. Sorry there's no songs to lead you into the weekend. I will find them. I will sort it out with the team. And next week it'll probably be more music than me. But here is the 11 o'clock ads for you. And I will tune in with you next week. Ciao for now.